Hi, good evening guys. Okay, we're just starting our video right now, live stream. This is actually at my place, so nothing exciting happening at the moment apart from Tina Louise Rothery, or Tina Louise UK, as you can see it on the screen, was in the Daily Politics today talking about fracking. On the fracking side, which got a lot of video, was somebody named Stephen Tindale, who was actually used to be a executive director of Greenpeace. That was from 2000 to 2005, according to his Wikipedia page, and is currently the director of the Alvin Weinberg Foundation. Okay, and a co-founder of the organization Climate Answers and associate fellow at the Center for European Reform. What else do we know? Okay, so he's a director of Alvin Weinberg Foundation, and here it is. Okay, so that means what else do we know about the guy? He is actually supports a few things like nuclear power and genetically modified organisms, which is actually quite fascinating because Greenpeace is actually opposed to both, as far as I know. Anyway, and then we have Tina Louise Rothery, who was actually started talking about fracking. So I shall be posting this. Okay, let's start the video and you can see the whole thing. Okay, just more please.
Tide, I thought would have been their problem. Tim Shipman, lots more to discuss, but another time. Thank you.
And then I'll declare for the leadership of UKIP next time.
Gosh, it's going to be a crowded room, isn't it? It's going to desecrate the countryside, pollute water supplies and contribute to climate change. Fracking would be an environmental disaster, no less. Well, that's the view of most environmentalists, but not the former boss of Greenpeace, Stephen Tindale. Here's his soapbox.
The English countryside, greenery in all its glory. I've spent the last 25 years campaigning on green issues, including 5 years as head of Greenpeace UK. But there's one issue on which I think the green movement needs urgently to rethink. Fracking. Here in the Lancashire countryside, the government has now given permission to Quadrilla to frack at Preston New Road. That's a good start, but we need dozens more such sites. Activist groups like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth should stop opposing shale gas and start embracing fracking. The reality is that Britain is facing an energy crisis, and the #1 environmental priority has to be to get rid of coal as quickly as possible. The government has said that coal stations will close within the next decade, but only if alternatives are available. So green campaigners must support all the alternatives. Anything but coal must be the motto. The best alternative is renewable energy such as wind, but there's no way renewables can expand fast enough by 2025 to fill all the gap. Nuclear is also progressing very slowly. Gas is a proven technology, only half as damaging to the climate as coal is. And most homes in Britain use gas for central heating. Britain now imports gas from Norway and Qatar. In Qatar, the gas is turned into liquid and brought by tanker. That makes it about 10% more climate damaging than shale gas would be. And there are very serious human rights concerns about Qatar. Shale gas that could be extracted from rocks such as these on the Fylde coast offers a better option. Fracking needs to be tightly regulated, as President Obama has done in the US, and evidence now shows that fracking does not lead to the devastation that campaigners are warning of. So, if we want to keep the lights on and stop burning coal, it's time for green campaigners to stop saying frack off and start saying frack on.
Okay, so that's 3 minutes of
Stephen Tindale
fracking commercial.
In the studio with us, and we're joined from Blackburn by the anti-fracking campaigner Tina Rothery. Tina, welcome to the programme. First of all, those to Stephen Tindale. People will be amazed to listen to you in the Green cause promoting fracking. Why? Why must fracking be the answer?
Fracking must be part of the answer, not the whole answer, but part of the answer, because we are still burning coal to generate almost a quarter of our electricity. And coal is much worse than any other option.
Right. Let's put that to
They also forgot to mention that this guy's company gets about £800,000 from Morgan Stanley.
In the interim period until renewables are secure enough in Stephen Tindale's mind that that's what we should do.
Fracking won't come online for at least 10 to 15 years. There's a great deal of infrastructure required. So if Stephen's talking about keeping the lights on, at what date does he feel they're going out? And how does he think fracking could possibly meet that date when to get into a decent contribution to our energy mix is going to be at least 10 to 15 years?
Right. So
and as for gas...
Yes, go on. No, you
It was also... because when Stephen spoke about it, fracking originally, when he first started promoting it, he talked about when we had carbon capture and storage. Now, the government's blown that one out of the water, so surely his argument now fails on that too.
Right. What about the answer that actually it's not going to be online either in time?
It will come online more quickly if green activists, who I respect, who have an important role in society, but shouldn't be beyond criticism, if green campaigners started supporting fracking, it would come online more quickly, and that would enable us to get rid of coal more quickly.
Right.
The point about carbon capture and storage, yes, absolutely, the government made a serious mistake, and I'm doing a lot of work, everything I can, to try and persuade them to bring carbon capture and storage back into the equation. And then it would be possible to burn coal more safely and burn gas more safely.
I mean, Tina, with the right regulations and the sort of conditions that Stephen is talking about, what is your objection to fracking?
We don't believe the regulators are up to the task. We've watched the examples in Canada, America, Australia, and we've seen their regulators fail and let them down. Also, I'd pick Stephen up on another point there. You know, we give 1.3 billion in tax breaks to the fossil fuel industry, and yet we're cutting them for renewables, and now we're saving ourselves 67p per household on what we're saving on cutting renewable subsidies. Surely it isn't just the activists who are holding back the production of newer technologies. If the government would maybe give some of those tax breaks to renewables, we could surge ahead and then start weaning ourselves off this old fossil fuel industry that no matter how you look at it, it has an expiry date.
Shouldn't you be taking your fight then to the government and pushing further ahead in the way Tina is outlining to push renewables, which you do believe in, as opposed to directing your fire at anti-fracking campaigners?
I'm picking plenty of fights with the government. I'm happy to come back and talk about that another day. 2 points. On regulation, the UK regulators are better. They're not perfect. They need to be properly resourced. But the Environment Agency is already, for example, requiring any fracked sites to be properly closed down, not just left, and any water that's been used for fracking to be held in closed containers.
He's also forgetting to mention that the taxpayer ends up paying for all these things.
On the subsidies point, tax breaks, they are indirect subsidies, but the government currently gets no money from tax on fracking because there isn't any fracking.
Right.
If they were to actually give money to fracking, I would oppose that.
Tax havens.
But they're not. They're proposing a lower tax rate, so they will at least get some tax revenue. So it's an increase in revenue, which should go to renewables.
In the end, Tina, I mean, we've seen the arrival of the first shipment of shale gas from the US. If we're going to be importing it in the way we are, why wouldn't it be better to have some fracking in Lancashire, where it can also create local jobs and help the economy?
As much as it pains me to take that gas from Pennsylvania when they begged us not to, because it just encourages the industry in an already damaged area, the deal that we have for importing shale gas from America, I believe is a 20-year contract anyway that would be very hard to get out of. To start an industry like this in our country, do you know the requirement for silica sand is huge, and that will happen in Cheshire, and that would be required to service the fracking industry, along with a great deal of pipelines and infrastructure. So we would put all that investment in for something that's going to eventually put out in about 10 to 15 years' time, will last only a couple of decades, and then be closed down, and then we'll be hearing about job losses. You know, in Australia, in Victoria, they just recently banned fracking because it would decimate agriculture, and for every 10 jobs you get in fracking, you lose 18 in agriculture. Right. That was a cross-party 5-year study that proved that.
Nick Herbert, you're against fracking, and certainly in your constituency.
No, I'm not against fracking per se. I've raised concerns about its impact on protected landscapes, such as the South Downs,
so which are very beautiful. It's NIMBYism in your area,
well, there is a national interest in protecting areas like the South Downs too, and I think there are two sets of issues. One is the below-the-ground issues, which I agree can be dealt with through effective regulation. And then there are the surface issues, which require setting up the wellhead and a lot of lorry movements. And that is about sensible location of the wellheads.
Right, so you'd be happy for it in Lancashire, but not in West Sussex?
No. There are already oil wells in West Sussex, including in my constituency. The question is whether they're sensibly located in a way that doesn't cause disruption to local communities, or, more particularly, damage to the countryside. And that can be achieved if the industry is sensible about where they put these wellheads.
Is that acceptable, or is that NIMBYism?
It's a bit of both, I think.
I make no apology for wanting to protect the South Downs.
That is the role of a constituency
Cameron
MP.
protecting Witney.
I think the wells have
George
to be
Osbourne
where there is shale
Tatton.
gas. My point is that it is
Briefly.
better to have shale gas in the UK than to import it from to import any gas from Qatar, where they have slave labour.
OK, I'm going to have to say goodbye to both of you. Thank you both very much, because there's just time before we go to find out the answer to our quiz. I didn't realise we were right.
Okay, anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening in. If you could share this, that would be great. And yeah, if you want to follow Tina Louise UK, she also writes, she has a blog called Tina Louise, here it is, Tina Louise blogspot.co.uk. But then if you follow her via Twitter, it's, Tina Louise UK. You can see it on this side. But in any case, it actually is troublesome that we have all these things. And yeah, unfortunately, the BBC didn't fail to mention that, yes, the government at the time, David Cameron and George Osbourne, for some reason, their constituencies are protected from fracking. That's Witney, and that's actually Tatton. They will not have fracking, along with this, the other guy, the other Tory. It is fascinating to mention that, just like the Tories, the Conservative Party, UKIP are also against fracking in this country, but they actually prefer to have fracking in places like Africa, which is actually, well, you'll have to actually figure out what people will think about that. It's like NIMBYism, but then yeah, it's okay if it's actually places like Africa. Anyway, we have to really think about all these things, like what the BBC would be publishing. Tindale is only mentioned as an ex-Greenpeace executive director. They don't even actually mention what other stuff he does. Yeah, he's worked for a number of he worked for what? Institute for Public Policy Research, which took money from Morgan Stanley. So that tells you how they would be like in criticizing certain banks or corporations. It's actually a scary thought. In any case, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. But anyway, speak to you later on, and peace out, please. Peace out.